Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Anyone remember Welcome Back, Cotter? That was horrible. Why did I do that? Why did I start off the episode with a reference most of you may not even get? It's one of the sad things about getting older is you wind up making references that fewer and fewer people get. Stuff that I feel like it should be just widely known. Well, c'est la vie. Anyway, in all seriousness, welcome back. We are now into episode 7, and we have garnered a lot of international streams. The UK, Luxembourg, France, Japan, China, Vietnam, Brazil, Cote d'Ivoire, South Africa, and Bangladesh. I mean, holy cow. And of course, let's not forget the bulk of the listeners are from the grand old US of A. Happy 250th birthday, my fellow Americans. 25th. What am I thinking? 250 years this year. I really do want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to listen to this project. And, it started off as a means of, reconnecting with my father, trying to learn what I couldn't from him and his passing, and, really just try to untangle this, this famous vendetta. And we've covered a lot of ground, but we are nowhere near the end. Heck, we've barely begun this. But before we begin, I want to stress that while we are discussing history on this podcast, that we don't forget to realize the history we are currently living through. History isn't just what happened in the past, it's what's happening now. And I experienced some history this past week, and allow me to indulge. My wife and I decided to take a trip to Las Vegas. And I'd never been, and it wasn't necessarily on my bucket list, but, it's still one of those places that you just kind of have to go see at some point, right? Well, about a year ago, we had our impetus for going. Now, we were watching CBS Sunday Morning. It's a routine of ours. When we heard about a showing of the movie The Wizard of Oz at the Sphere. Now, for those of you who may not know, the Sphere is a performance venue just off the Strip, and it's probably one of the most high-tech venues in the world at this moment. And let me explain. The venue measures about 366 feet high and about 516 feet wide, roughly the size of a Major League Baseball field. It opened just under 3 years ago in September of 2023 and features a 16K resolution interior screen measuring 160,000 square feet. I mean, that's almost 3 regulation football fields worth of screen. And it wraps around the front of the venue you face, in your seat, kind of like the visor of a motorcycle helmet. It also has an exterior exosphere, which is 580,000 square feet, made of 1.2 million LEDs. Now, that may seem like a whole bunch of information. I myself wasn't quite sure what, 16K resolution is, so I had to dig a little bit. To get your images on a TV, you need pixels, and those pixels can light up in different ways with different colors, like a mosaic. If you stood close, you'd see the pixels more so than the image it's creating, but you take steps back, and then you see the greater image. Well, that's how the pixels working together. A 4K resolution is called that because it roughly has 4,000 pixels going across the screen. To be more specific, 1,840 pixels across and about 2,160 pixels down, forming a grid of all these little light-changing dots, roughly about 8 million pixels in total. The bigger the screen, the less sharp the image. 4K on a 50-inch screen is amazing, but on a billboard, if you have that same amount on the billboard, it loses a lot of that crispness. The interior screen of the Sphere is 16K, meaning it has roughly 16,000 pixels running across and about 16,000 down. Now, based on the size of the screen, it's about 1,600 pixels per square foot. And this screen is 160,000 square feet, amounting to 256 million pixels across the entire screen. I mean, that's amazingly high definition capability. So, what we had watched on CBS Sunday Morning is that at the Sphere, they decided to show a movie on this screen. But it's more complicated and more involved than that, because due to the age of the film, to have it so enlarged would be difficult to watch because it would look grainy. Plus, the Sphere isn't a rectangle, so they did a lot of extra features to this experience. And here's where it gets crazy. Since the screen is so massive, they what's called outpainted the film so that AI could generate the rest of the scene that would have occurred outside what you see on the screen, creating a much broader world. In other words, instead of only showing the movie on an immense screen, you use the regular film and then you use technology to fill out the rest. You see the beams inside the rooms of the house, the clouds above you outside, characters who you ordinarily wouldn't see during the movie off screen are there. And on that large of a screen, they had to work on the original footage also to sharpen it up. Otherwise, you'd have a really large, blurry film. And when they go see The Wizard for the first time, he covers that entire screen. It's intense. Then they made it 4-dimensional. Wind, fog, wax paper kind of like leaves blow around the interior during the tornado. They have these big fans blowing all this stuff, so you're feeling the wind as you see this massive tornado on the screen. The chairs have haptic capabilities, so they thump during events, and somehow they had mechanical butterflies and flying monkeys, not digitally, but realistically in the space flying in front of you. I mean, it was insane. And yes, of course, the legendary foam apples that drop from slits in the ceiling during this apple tree shaking. And they have about 500 apples drop per show, meaning that only about 11% of the audience will get one. Now, they don't sell out the entire Sphere because the closer you sit to the side, the more distorted the image is based on how it's being projected on that screen through those pixels. It's not like a projector in a movie. It's emanating from the actual panels themselves, like the biggest, high definition LD TV that you've ever had. And based on where you're sitting, when they're dropping these foam apples that come out from a very, very, tall distance, you have to be sitting in certain sections. And we happen to be lucky enough. We, yes, did catch an apple. And we got to bring that home. And see, that's why we went to Las Vegas, to experience this. We wanted to experience this potentially revolutionary step in movie going. And of course, we ate a lot of good food. Originally, it was only supposed to run through the end of March, but they extended it through the end of this year. Now, it opened last August, I think, and it was only supposed to go through, and now they're extending it through the remainder of this year. So it opened in 25, it's now 26. And I can't tell you how excited I am that this could potentially lead to how it's going to change the movie-going experience in the future. It's absolutely amazing. So in short, we experienced history, and it was amazing. But for now, let's go back to the past and tie up some loose ends from the last episode on This Famous Vendetta. I'm your host, Jason Hatfield. Welcome. I know that was a lot of talking about this kind of nerdy little experience, but I cannot tell you, I can't stress enough how amazing it was. We also saw Ka when we were there. Cirque du Soleil. Never seen anything like that before either. So, good trip. So thanks for letting me sort of kind of nerd out there for a second. But before we move on, I think it is worth taking a moment to look back at what we've already stripped away. Because, the story most people think they know of this family history, it's already falling apart. First, the feud did not begin with the Civil War. Okay, that's one myth that we've dispelled. Yes, Asa Harmon McCoy was killed near the Civil War's end. Yes, he fought for the Union. Yes, his killers were believed to be Confederate sympathizers, but no indictments came from it. And more importantly, no feud followed. From Asa's death in 1865 to the Hogg trial in 1878, where our history currently resides, there are no killings. So, that's out. Second, this wasn't Kentucky versus West Virginia, neatly divided along a river. We've already seen that that's not true. The families lived on both sides. Trials were held across state lines, like Preacher Ance Hatfield hosting court in his Kentucky home. So it's not the Hatfields living in one state, McCoy's living in another. So that myth's gone too. Third, this wasn't a bunch of violent, lawless hillbillies settling everything with guns. Up to this point, we've seen more court cases than killings, so that one doesn't hold either. And finally, this wasn't some ancient generational blood war. There's no evidence of that. In fact, there's evidence of the opposite. These families were intermarried. And that part, it's about to matter a lot more today. So buckle up. All right, last episode, we talked about the Hogg trial. Floyd Hatfield stood accused of stealing Randall McCoy's pigs, and despite being found not guilty in a court of law, family lore tends to lead towards his guilt. Should we do that? I mean, is there any evidence to suggest he was guilty? Well, again, it depends on which side you reference. Do we override a court's decision because a story feels right? Because it will add to what we want the escalation to be, the drama? Well, I'll leave that to you, because the deeper you dig into this case, the less certain it becomes. And at the center of it all is a deceptively simple question. Were the pigs marked or not? McCoy accounts say yes, Hatfield accounts say no, and that single detail changes everything. So if they were marked, then Floyd knowingly took another man's property. If they weren't, then he didn't. But even the testimony doesn't hold steady. Bill Staton, the key witness, either claimed he saw Floyd notch the pig's ears, or that the identification of the pigs was based on the color of the pigs. Two completely different claims. Same witness. So what are we dealing with here? Memory? Bias? Agenda? Because there's always an agenda. Even Devil Amps himself, in one interview years afterward, places the trial 6 years earlier than we know it occurred. So is that a faulty memory or faulty reporting? We don't know. We will see more of that. What we do know is that later accounts simplify everything into one clean origin story. Quote, "It all began over two long-nosed razorback hogs," end quote. It's neat, it's memorable, and it's probably not that simple. Now, let's review a little bit more looking at the trial itself. Uncle Wall Hatfield was supposed to preside but recused himself, likely due to family ties. He was a cousin of the accused, Floyd Hatfield. So who steps in? Preacher Ance Hatfield. Which raises a fair question. Why is one cousin considered too biased, but another isn't? Well, maybe it's the title, Preacher Carries Weight. We talked all about this last episode. Either way, the trial is held at Preacher Ance's cabin in Kentucky, and the jury was 12 men, 6 Hatfields, 6 McCoys. Not exactly what we call neutral, but at the very least fair. And yet the deciding factor comes down to one man, Bill Staton. His testimony, however you interpret it, pig ears or the color of the pigs, it tips the scales. And the verdict is that Floyd Hatfield was not guilty. But the real story isn't the verdict. It's what happens next, or rather during the trial, because one McCoy breaks ranks. Selkirk McCoy. Selkirk McCoy votes with the Hatfields, and instantly he's branded a traitor. Randall McCoy reportedly considers him a full-blooded Hatfield from that point forward. And decades later, true to McCoy, echoes the same idea, claiming Selkirk was already compromised before the trial even began due to his alleged ties to the Hatfields. As we had mentioned before, he had been employed on Ance's timber crew, but Truda also claims that Selkirk had, quote, married a Hatfield. So Wall recuses himself and preacher Ance stacks the jury? Is that possible? The TV miniseries alludes to Selkirk's bias when Randall McCoy, played by the amazing Bill Paxton, rest in peace, when Randall McCoy claims that Selkirk voted his Hatfield-wise apron strings. But did he? At any rate, in Truda's telling, the outcome was practically predetermined. But here's the problem. There's no clear evidence that Selkirk is a Hatfield. After all, his last name is McCoy, right? But let's try to take a closer look into the ties these people already have. Doing a little digging into the turn on Selkirk, I find that Selkirk's grandfather, Samuel, is brothers with Randall's father, Daniel. So again, Selkirk and Randall are, first cousins once removed? Now, granted, just because you're family doesn't necessarily mean that you all are on the same page. Also, true to claim that Selkirk's wife, Louisa Williamson, was a Hatfield, but there's no evidence she was a Hatfield. I only find one Louisa in my research, and she's not a Hatfield. At least not by name, by what I found. So the conclusion? Selkirk doesn't appear to be a full-blood, even if we know Randall's alleged statement isn't meant to be literal. And his wife's lineage, I'm unaware of. So the label doesn't quite stick. But what does stick is perception. Selkirk worked in Devil Ance's timber operation. So did Floyd. So did Bill Staton. That alone may have been enough. Was the almighty dollar that persuasive to turn three people to either lie or be turncoats? I mean, I don't know. What are the chances? Three people. I'm on this timber crew, so I'm going to lie. Three people? But what I believe, it's not as important as what the McCoys believed, because in a place where family, work, and survival are all tangled together, neutrality starts to look like betrayal, at least for the McCoys at this point. But how is it that it's easier to believe that Floyd, Bill, and Selkirk are just so easily bought? Why not that Floyd was simply not guilty, as the verdict suggested? I mean, think about that for a minute. And again, I'll leave that to you. But here is where something shifts, because this case over two pigs cuts deeper probably than it should. Now, we talked about how pigs were important, but the amount of animosity that's held because of this verdict seems a little much, especially if Floyd is not guilty. If he is guilty, then I guess there's some reason for the animosity and this feeling of hatred towards Selkirk's, I guess, betrayal. But again, he's found not guilty, and the deciding vote is by Selkirk McCoy. So why is this cutting so deep for the McCoys? Well, the McCoys don't just lose property. I think they lose faith in the system, at least this time. Whether that belief is justified or not, it becomes real. And for Randall McCoy, something begins to turn. The Civil War did not push him into vengeance, not immediately, but now Now you have a dead brother in the past, a humiliating court loss in the present, and the sense that justice isn't being served. Now, whether that's true or not, this justice not being served, the combination of these matter. And the McCoys take it really, really hard. And it's this might be the moment where resentment finally hardens into something else, something dangerous. And not long after, that tension finds a target. It's not Floyd Hatfield, and it's not Selkirk McCoy. It's Bill Staton, the man whose testimony helped decide the case. Now, Randall's nephews, he's got two nephews, Sam and Paris McCoy. Sam and Paris take issue with Bill Staton almost immediately after the verdict, openly even. In fact, some lore alludes to Randall actually pushing his nephews to do mischief. Sam and Paris are sons of one of Randall's brothers, Samuel. Now, Squirrel Hunting Sam, the son of Samuel. Both of these are the son of Samuel. Squirrel Hunting Sam was born around 1855 in Paris, about 1860. Sam got his nickname obviously due to his prowess at squirrel hunting, allegedly having shot 100 in a day, though sometimes he's just referred to as Big Sam. Paris, we don't know much about. Both Sam and Paris accuse Staton of lying. They argue with him repeatedly. And depending on which account you believe, Bill may have been just as ready for a fight. Some say he'd sworn to kill any McCoy he crossed paths with. Now, one account of this incident is that Bill Staton and his brother are attacked on the river by two McCoys, and they exchange gunfire at each other to no effect. And later, Bill is bushwhacked and nearly beaten to death by McCoys in the woods. Now, theory is, and perhaps understandably then, Bill is willing to kill any other McCoys that cross his path because of these incidents. He's apparently had his fill. And if that's true, then this animosity isn't just one-sided. But he didn't seem to bring lawsuits or complain to local authorities. I mean, why wouldn't he? We've seen 2 lawsuits so far. Why wouldn't Bill have brought charges against those who attacked him? Maybe because he wanted to take matters into his own hands? I mean, I don't know. But the animosity was building, and then we come to June 18th, 1880. The second death tied to this conflict finally happens. And again, the details don't line up. Maybe it happens on a farm with witnesses nearby. Maybe it happens in the woods with no one around. Both accounts occur in family lore. Maybe Bill shoots first. Maybe Sam does. There are multiple versions, even from the same source. It's the Rashomon effect all over again. One account of the interaction leading up to this claims that while riding home, Bill is stopped in the road by Sam, and Sam confronts Bill, calling him a liar, and they are separated by bystanders before a full-fledged fight ensues. Later, after that, while Sam and Paris are hunting, Bill allegedly lays in wait and shoots Paris, wounding him. Then Bill and Sam fight before Sam ultimately kills Bill Staton. Now, Truda also claims that Sam told a grandson that he and Paris were farming. When Bill Staton rode up, told Sam and 2 young girls who were nearby to stand back, then pulled out a gun and shot Paris, jumped off his horse, and began to beat Paris with the butt of his pistol when Sam shot Bill Staton, killing him. Again, vastly different accounts. One out in the open, brash and bold, the other hidden in the woods. If he had been jumped and beaten multiple times, I'd imagine he was quite put out. But Bill Staton never notified authorities, and therefore would he want to seek vengeance by way of a killing? Or were the McCoys still smarting from that court case, looking to finish him off after making multiple attempts on his life? Either way, the outcome is consistent. Bill Staton ends up dead, and Sam McCoy pulls the trigger. Now, here's where it gets complicated, as if it's not already. Because If you've been paying attention, does this sound like a Hatfield versus McCoy situation? Yes, Floyd was accused of theft, and yes, a Hatfield sat as judge, but he didn't determine guilt, or rather the lack of guilt. That was Selkirk McCoy, and he's branded as a traitor. And Sam and Paris will then kill Bill Staten later. So is this the start of Hatfield versus McCoy? Not really, and that's because Bill Staten is a McCoy. Now try to follow me. Bill Staten's mother is Nancy McCoy, who married a William Staten. Nancy is a cousin of Randall, because Randall's father, Daniel McCoy, is brothers to Nancy's father, John McCoy. As we mentioned before, Sam and Paris are nephews to Randall McCoy. So Nancy's son, Bill, is second cousins to Sam and Paris. Cousins killing a cousin, or cousins defending themselves from an attack by a cousin. Therefore, Bill Staten is second cousin to his murderers, Sam and Paris, also McCoys. All in the family. But wait, it gets better. Bill Staten's sister, Esther, or in some cases, Easter, is Floyd Hatfield's wife. Floyd was accused and acquitted of stealing Randall's hogs, so Floyd is related by marriage to Randall, his accuser. And Bill and Esther have another sister, Sarah Ann, who's now, at this point, married to Ellison Hatfield, brother of Wall and Devil Anse. They are all seemingly related. That may have been why Wall wished to recuse himself from presiding over the hog trial after all. Not that he was a cousin of Floyd, but that his brother was married to Floyd's sister-in-law. Therefore, being a brother-in-law to the sister of his cousin's wife, and whose wife's brother is killed by their second cousins? What is going on here? This is a killing within the same extended family. So can this be a start of a feud between families if it's a cousin killing cousin? Not the way we think of it. Maybe not. Bill's sister is married to Floyd Hatfield. Another sister is married to Ellison Hatfield. So this isn't two separate families. It's one tangled network. And when violence happens inside that network, is it vengeance on the Hatfields? I'll get to that in just a second. Sam and Paris will be arrested sometime later. Paris is arrested in a month, and Sam is arrested 2 years after. Ellison Hatfield, brother to Wall and Anse, testifies against Sam and Paris. And presumably, as he is the brother-in-law to Bill Staten, though according to Altina Waller's research, she says that several McCoy relatives from both sides of the river testified against each defendant. So Sam and Paris are put on trial and then acquitted. Family lore suggests that Devil Anse wants this all to go away, as it could be bad for business. Murder in a valley involving people in his timber industry. I mean, he allegedly appeals to Wall, as Wall was president of the county court, and Wall supposedly uses his influence to push for an acquittal. Allegedly. In whatever way, Sam and Paris are acquitted based on self-defense because there are a lack of witnesses. Sound familiar? The McCoys immediately feel vindicated by this acquittal. Truda will write later, "Let Floyd keep Randall's hogs. They were even at last." For who? Who was even? How is this a dunk on the Hatfields? McCoy cousins killing each other. How is that justice? How does this apply to Hatfields? Unless it's because of the belief that Bill was more Hatfield than McCoy? Even if that wasn't true? I mean, just like Selkirk? Or maybe, like with Asa, they were considered traitors. What's interesting is that after the hog trial, the McCoys feel like they can't get a fair trial. And after Sam and Paris's acquittal, the Hatfields believe a West Virginian can't. So what is this becoming? A family feud or something else entirely? Many early accounts seem to suggest that this is the start, but of a feud between two families? Because it doesn't appear that way in a lot of different contexts. This looks more like McCoys killing each other that they consider to be traitors. But it does look like the start of a breakdown of trust in courts and testimony in each other. Because at the end of all this, Bill Staten is dead. Sam and Paris walk free, and some would say the score is settled. Blood for pigs. Even, balanced to a degree. Peace, at least for a moment, returns to the Tug Valley. But if that were truly the end of it, there wouldn't be this podcast, nor in episode 8. And there is. And there's one more thing we've learned as a debunked myth. There is no true story to this history. Accounts are different, versions clash, and the only people who know the truth are dead. All we can do is tell what we know from what we've been told, and that varies. So if you ever hear of a true version of these events, I think we've established that simply doesn't seem to be attainable. And it's going to get more convoluted, more violent, and more personal. But next episode, oh, love is in the air. Let's take a break from some of the animosity and killing. Next time, we'll talk about another well-known component of this conflict, the very famous Romeo and Juliet relationship, and you won't want to miss it. That's all we have time for today. If you have any questions, have you found us on social media? We're there. Look for This Famous Vendetta on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and even YouTube. As our listenership grows, so will our desire to expand this platform. Stick with us. Reach out. You got questions? Ask. I've answered questions on here. I love questions. Subscribe to our podcast and also like us, rate us, and leave a comment for us. We want to hear from you, and we want to get the word out about this famous vendetta in this famous birthday year of our country. So thanks again for listening. Now go out there and make history in a good way. See you next time.